Alrighty, so it's time for me to do one of the more anticipated season preview since I started this season preview series a couple of weeks ago, looking at all 29 MLS teams before the season began. And that, of course, is talk about one of my team, Minnesota United. Now, in recent year, I think there's definitely a lot of optimism in the Loons fan base that this team can be an MLS Cup contender again. In fact, I feel like that kind of optimism all started after they lost in that Western Conference final against Seattle in 2020, where in 2021 it looked like there was optimism that they can get themselves back in that stage, and yeah, it didn't happen. They lost to the Portland Timbers in the first round, but even then, last season, there was optimism that they can be a contender again, and that they definitely made some moves in the offseason to look like they were aligned to be a team that can make a deep playoff run, and yeah, that did not happen. I mean, if the season ended in August, it would have been the case, but they went on that 6-game losing streak and almost missed out on the playoffs and lose to FC Dallas in the first round. And now heading into 2023, I feel like this is really the first season for a while where there's definitely not a lot of optimism in the Loons fan base. In fact, there's kind of been more pessimism and just kind of more just some nervy energy in terms of how this team is going to do this year because of the way that, it feels like they kind of decided to run it back, especially on the attacking end. I mean, most of the attacking pieces are still there. And then there's obviously the concern about the defense, especially with the way that last season of how it absolutely falls apart because of the fact that we lost the key injury to Debasi, and the fact that, this offseason, I mean, they really haven't done too much in terms of adjusting that issue. Is going to be something that maybe why a lot of Loons fans, including myself, are not very optimistic. The fact that this team could once again make a deep playoff run, and maybe even making the playoffs in general too. But that being said, last season they did finish with a 14-6-14 record and finished with 48 points. They finished 6th in the standings, but lost to FC Dallas in the first round. Previous year, they finished 5th with a 13-10-11 record and finished with 49 points, but they did lose to the Portland Timbers in the first round. 2020, in the COVID-shortened year, they finished 4th in the standings with a 9-7-5 record and finished with 34 points, but they lost to the Seattle Sounders in the Western Conference final. And to this day, I still won't mention exactly what happened that day because that day still traumatized me a little bit. But in 2019, they also finished 4th place with a 15-8-11 record and finished with 53 points. But unfortunately, they did lose to the LA Galaxy in the first round, and that was, of course, their first ever playoff game in franchise history. And then in 2018, it was still the second year of the 3-year plan that Adrian Heath famously talked about. And just like the first season, it didn't go so well in the second season either. 11-3-20, finishing 10th in the standings with 36 points and did not make it to the playoffs. Now, in terms of some of the transfer that they made this offseason, again, I know I said that they haven't really addressed the back line, and when you look at some of the signings, they kind of have been signing a couple of defenders. But again, one of the thing that I want to say, the reason why they haven't really addressed the back line is it's not because of depth. I mean, they have started to get more depth pieces in the back line, but it's just, I feel like they need to think about finding another starting quality center back, especially with the way that, when you look at this back line with Debasi and Boxall start to age to a point where, I think they may have 1 more or 2 more year left before they seriously need to think about replacing them. And that, I have heard that there's that rumor that they were going to bring a guy like that down Liga MX with Miguel Tapias, but recently that rumor has kind of stalled, and I haven't really heard anything else on that, and it just makes me think that probably that's not going to happen, which would really sucks because that was the piece that I think could really help this team long term in terms of fixing the defensive woes. But like I said, they have at least kind of addressed the defensive depth with adding Michael Marquez this offseason. But there's a question of, is he even decent with the way that he came from the Swedish second division? They also added Cameron Dunbar, adding a little bit more depth in the wing position. And then they got Daniel Henry, again, another guy that I think could be a depth piece in the defense, or maybe even elevate himself in the starting role, because I know that a lot of Loons fans don't want to hear the partnership of Boxall and Coleman again, especially the nightmare that I remember I saw with Boxall and Coleman, how they was just an absolute mess in terms of being together. Almost something similar to what I saw in the first two seasons, when I think that was kind of the center back partnership for a bit, and it did not work well whatsoever. Well, it was more Boxall and Calvo was the center back partnership, and that was just an absolute disaster. They also got more depth in the fullback position by bringing Zarek Valentine, and then they of course bring in a backup goalkeeper in Clint Irvin. I think that's a good signing, knowing the fact that, you know, after letting go of Tyler Miller, which I'm still kind of disappointed how they really let him go for absolutely nothing, when they clearly could have sold him for value during the summer transfer window. But replace him with Clint Irvin isn't really a bad upgrade. I think Clint Irvin is a decent backup goalkeeper. And then in the draft, they of course get Ryan Jiba, who, again, if you remember, he is a guy that is part of that Union Omaha team that beat Minnesota United in one of the greatest upset we have seen in the U.S. Open Cup. But certainly that is going to go down as probably one of the worst night in Minnesota United history, losing to a third division team in the U.S. Open Cup. But I guess maybe the Loons just had that philosophy that, hey, if you can't beat them, then why not sign one of their players and hope that he is going to provide some good things to you, and that, again, he would probably be used more of a depth piece in that defensive line. Now, in terms of some of the players that the Loons lost, they definitely lost a couple of key depth pieces, but certainly one that really hurts is losing Azel Jackson to St. Louis. And the reason why I say that this really hurts is because I just never understand why he didn't get any minutes to play for the senior team, because when I saw him play multiple times for the second team, he was a stud. He is a guy that has some good potential to be a decent player, and I think St. Louis really hit it out. Well, not really hit it out of the park, because we'll see whether if he does get more minutes with St. Louis for this upcoming season, whether that potential can be showcased in the top level. But I can definitely see that he can be a decent player, and that, again, you know, this is one of the problems for Minnesota United ever since day one, where they don't have a really good academy, and even if they do produce some good academy players, Adrian Heath is very stubborn to play some of his young guys. In fact, he does not like to play a lot of those young guys from the academy. And yeah, Azel Jackson, which is kind of part of the many young players that just never got look on, but they move on to somewhere else and turns out to be well. And that, again, it hurts to see him move on, when he could definitely be a future piece for this attacking side. But they also lost Tyler Miller off to DC United. Again, you know, I mentioned how I'm still kind of frustrated that they didn't get anything for him, and they allow him to just kind of go away with absolute nothing in terms of getting any value out of him. They also lose Nico Hansen, Romain Métanire. Of course, you know, that was kind of the case, because, you know, Métanire, he just never able to recover from that serious injury that he suffered. I think he actually re-injured himself as he was making his way back, and he just, again, never looked the same. But one player that I'm think every Loons fans can be happy that they finally got rid of is Abu Denladi. I mean, it's safe to say that second stint of him coming back to Minnesota United did not work out whatsoever, and I'm think everyone are glad that he finally is no longer with this team. But then we got Ja'Cory Hayes, O'Neill Fisher, Calvin Montgomery, Justin McMaster, Nebu Kibuguchi, and also Jonathan Gonzalez no longer on this team. It seems like they decided to not purchase him permanently, which is a shame, because, you know, during the short time that Jonathan Gonzalez was with Minnesota United, he definitely made some good impact, especially coming off the bench. I mean, I will never forget the goal that he, of course, scored on decision day to pretty much secure the team chances of making the playoffs. And that, I thought maybe they could have negotiated with Rayados, maybe extend his loan for a little bit more, but it seems like he's not coming back. But I guess maybe a lot of that has to do with the fact that they are going to get Hassani Dotson back, and that maybe Hassani Dotson will be playing that role, or maybe even challenge Kervin Arriaga in terms of that holding midfield role. Now, in terms of the strength of this team, it's definitely the midfield. You know, the midfield is definitely a big strength. I mean, say what you say about Will Trapp. I think he's a decent player. I mean, there's some naysayers that say Will Trapp isn't good. I thought at times last season. I mean, at times there were times where he didn't perform well, but there's times where he has looked like the Will Trapp that he was with the Columbus Crew, which is a very decent player. And not to mention Kervin Arriaga, a guy that was just an absolute steal for Minnesota. I mean, it was just a decent number 6 that can do the dirty work, and the fact that they only got him from like what $50,000 from the Honduran league, that is just an absolute steal for the team. And then not to mention goalkeeping is definitely a strength. I mean, Dane Sinclair, easily in my opinion could be a top 5 goalkeeper and could be a future Canadian men's national team goalkeeper too for this Canadian national side, and that again he's gonna continue to get better to a point where I won't be surprised in the future he could be sold off for a big amount of money as European team. Or probably start looking at Dane Sinclair and say, yep, that's a player that we think that could have potential to be decent for us, and that Minnesota is going to get some good transfer fee out of that. But in terms of the weakness, it's really a defense and attack, and I wrote depends on days because it feels like last season there's been times where I say the defense was the weakness, which was kind of the case in the latter part of last season as soon as they lost DeBassi, and that it was a Boxall and Coleman kind of partnership. And you know, Brent Coleman, there's a reason why a lot of Loons fans, even though he can be at times be a little bit of a cult hero, there's times where a lot of Loons fans does not like him because he's no longer an MLS caliber defender. I mean, he never was, and that he had to step in right away, and he didn't really help his case in terms of trying to win the fan base back a little bit. The fact that he can be a decent emergency backup, but also not to mention the fact that we have lack of depth, with which at least I would say that they kind of addressed this season with adding some depth piece on the defensive area, but you don't know if they're going to be decent whatsoever. And then of course on the attack, again, depend on days, because you know there's been times last season I saw this team really struggle in terms of scoring goals, and then there's times where, remember that summer when this team was winning and how this attack was literally on fire? Yeah, there's time where I could say that was the strength of this team. I mean, when Reynoso was just at times being the best number 10 in the league, and Amaria scoring goals at will, and even Fragapane doing very well and looked like the Fragapane that we saw from 2 years ago when he first signed with this team. Yeah, I mean, the attack at times could be a strength, but it could also be a weakness when I still remember last season in the beginning where they were just having so much trouble in terms of scoring goals. So again, it really depends on the days. It feels like last season, from what I saw from the team, there was never a balance of the fact that whether if the attack is good, the defense of course sucks, but then if the defense are good, the attack also sucked. So the three big question coming into Minnesota United this season, the first big question has to be what's going on with Reynoso and Kemar Lawrence. Now, in the Kemar Lawrence situation, I have heard that he is actually going to be joining the team relatively soon because he's been having some family issue down in Jamaica. But obviously the big one I think everybody's talked about is Emmanuel Reynoso. Now, there has been transfer rumor that Reynoso could potentially be sold off from somewhere else, which I think that would be a huge mistake if Minnesota United decide to sell him off, because he literally is the heartbeat of this team, especially on the attacking end. And, you know, I know Adrian Heath has tried to be positive and said that he's going to eventually return to the team. But again, you know, whatever he's dealing with, and again, this probably had something to do with him getting in trouble last year on the whole pistol whip situation that he got himself in. Thrown in jail down in Argentina. But again, let's just hope he figure that out and rejoin the team, because as we get closer and closer to the regular season and he still hasn't report from the team, the more concerned that I am. And even if he does join the team before the regular season begin, I do have concern in terms of him getting his match fitness, and that again, and just this just feels like it's a no-win situation where, again, the best case scenario is that he is going to return before the regular season begin. But if he doesn't return before the regular season begin, oh my goodness, all that optimism, or at least if there's any optimism left of this team to potentially be decent this year, is going to be wiped out the map. I mean, I can't imagine how this team is going to look without Reynoso. Even if it's just for the beginning of the season, they're going to really struggle on the attacking end. And that also brings me to the defensive area. Again, they have added more defensive depth, but I still feel like they need to add another defensive starting piece. And again, that goes back to what I said about the Miguel Tapia's situation, with the way that, I haven't heard a lot about him potentially joining the team ever since I've heard there was a report that it seems like he has finalized his deal to join Minnesota United, and let's just hope eventually that deal is going to confirm, because he's definitely a piece that this team desperately needed, knowing the fact that the backline is aging badly. And then lastly, the third big question: can this team not just single-handedly rely on Reynoso and relieve him of carrying this attack off his back? I mean, there's been times where I have heard people have said that this team is heavily rely on Reynoso, and it's true, because he's pretty much the star of this team. Everything center Reynoso, and you notice when you watch a lot of Minnesota United game, which I have, it always goes to Reynoso. It depends on how Reynoso performs. If he performs well, this team is going to do well. If he doesn't perform well, then this team ain't going to do well. And if he's not there, that which could be a possibility, then this team definitely don't do well either. So yeah, again, it's going to be interesting to see other players on this team. Can they carry that attacking load a little bit off of Reynoso back? And there could be a potential that is the case. I mean, if Luis Amarilla would keep his promise that he can be a default goal scorer, there you go. If Robin Lod can be more consistent in terms of his finishing, which he has shown that he was able to do it, especially in the first part of the season when he literally was like our only goal scorer. Yeah, that could be the case. If Franco Fragapane can not be so inconsistent last season, there you go. That could be the case too. So again, when you look at this attack, it's very weirdly constructed, where again everything relies on Reynoso, but you also just have players that can be game changer if they can get themselves into good form. And that's a big if, because there's been time where we see guys on this team just cannot get themselves into good form, and basically that's where the attack really struggle. And then the bonus question for this team, again going back to Luis Amarilla, how many goals is he gonna score this year? I mean, the over and under, if I would say, would be 10 goals, and I'm hoping that it's gonna be the over, because there's a reason why they signed him as a number 9. He's supposed to be the answer in terms of that cursed number 9 that this team has not been able to get a decent one since Christian Ramirez left. And then if he is not the answer, do they still go after another number 9? And this offseason, they've been very aggressive in terms of going after a number 9. I mean, we have heard reports of them going with both of those Korean striker, and it seems like those rumors have now officially died down. And that, I think maybe that's also a way that, maybe that's kind of a wake-up call if you're Luis Amarilla. Like, if you're Luis Amarilla and you hear those rumors, I can guarantee you that definitely not only makes you unhappy, but maybe kind of motivates him a little bit, that, hey, the team is thinking about replacing him, and that you need to basically prove them that you are the answer to the problem that this team has not had a decent number 9 since Christian Ramirez. So I guess maybe that's just used as a way to motivate Luis Amarilla, which, if that is the case, bravo to the team. But let's just hope that's going to be the case, and that Amarilla could be the goal scorer that hopefully we promised when we first bought him, and even bring him back to this team. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of the season preview for Minnesota United. If you're a Loons fan like myself, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, and the 3 big question facing this team? I mean, there's a lot of big question I can even go on about this team, but just for the sake, I want to keep the season preview short, and don't want to try to go too much much of it compared to what I did with season preview with other team. Of course, we'll mention it a little bit more as the season goes along. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.